It's okay. I'll just use this. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to our second hot panel session today. This afternoon, we'll be discussing technology and the 6 principles and oversight. The panel will be made up of myself, Christel Broady, Jennifer Meyer, Justin Shewell, George Kormpas, Christine Coombe, and Johnna Paraiso. I'm sorry, she is replacing Joseph Winery. He was not able to come to the conference this year. So without further ado, before I present the panelists, I just want to mention the purpose of our panel discussion is that TESOL's most successful publication this year, The 6 Principles, has overlooked the concept or the integration of technology and the role technology should play in relation to the six principles. So basically, we're arguing that, or we're advocating, we're not arguing, we're advocating that technology should partner the 6 principles. So whether they're partnering the educator or the learner, or partnering the context in which the learning is happening, we need to think of how can technology help move the whole space forward. And on that basis, our panelists will be discussing each of the different principles. So our first panelist will be Justin Shewell, and basically, who is he? He is a very important person for us at COLE, and now we are losing him to a certain extent because he has been elected to the new board of directors of TESOL. So that is, we're sad about that, but we're also very happy. Justin is also the recipient of the award that he received this morning, the 2019 D. Scott Enrid Intersection Service Award. And he deserves it with 100%, 100%, not only 100%, he deserves it. Anyway, Justin has a PhD in educational technology from Arizona State, and he is a co-creator of several popular online courses and an author of several books. He was the former chair of COLE IS and has served as Electronic Village program manager for several years. Our second presenter is Dr. Christel Broady, a member of the TESOL Board of Trustees, and she has chaired, which IS? Sorry, what IS had you? EIS, and also the COLE IS Steering Committee. At present, she is the chair of the Advanced Graduate Program and professor of graduate education, directing the online ESL teacher education program, which has received the highest ranking in the state and nation for its quality. She has also authored a long list of publications, keynote talks, presentations, and awards, and has been recognized in the area of COLE domestically in the USA and in many countries. She has chaired many sessions, and she has also been a conference organizer at TESOL, Kentucky. So she is a lifelong learner and a TESOL geek. A technology geek. Our third presenter, I'm reading from very small font. Our third presenter is George Kormpas. George is currently the Director of Teaching, Learning, and Development in Saudi Arabia at Yamamah University. He also works for the Center for Executive Education and teaches at Interlink. George is pursuing a PhD researching technology-enhanced learning at Lancaster University. He is a member of the COLE IS Steering Committee, and he is the incoming chair of ANPC, the affiliate network professional counselor of TESOL International. George is co-author of the new book, 6 Principles for Exemplary Teaching of English Learners, Academic and Specific Purposes. Our next speaker is Jennifer Meyer. Jennifer is the co-chair-elect of our COL-IS, and she is an ESL teacher at Edmondson Elementary School and Sunset Middle School in Brentwood, Tennessee. She's been teaching ESL, EFL in the US and Europe for over 20 years. She is a PhD candidate in literacy studies in Middle Tennessee State University, and she is a local, regional, and international presenter and researcher on topics involving professional development for general education teachers working with ESL, learning disabilities, ELS, and core topics in K through 12 EL instruction. Our last presenter, I can't say your name, Johnna Paraiso, is an instructional technology facilitator at Rutherford County, Tennessee, and she also is very active in COL and in TESOL. Thank you for being here, and thank you for stepping in to Keiko. Christine Kuhn will be joining us later on, and she will be the last presenter. Dr. Christine Kuhn is an associate professor of general studies in Dubai Men's College in UAE. She has a PhD in foreign and second language education from The Ohio State University. She is widely published in areas such as assessment, leadership, research methods, TBLT, teaching effectiveness and efficiency. Christine served as conference chair of TESOL Convention in Tampa 2006, and as TESOL International Association President from 2011 to 2012. She received the James E. Altus Award for Exemplary Service to TESOL in 2018. And I'm the current COL-IS chair until Friday, and then Jennifer takes over with Maria as chair. Okay. So basically, just to run down, well, sorry. It's the raffle time. Hopefully I'll be winning. Then I'm leaving the panel. Okay. I think it's over. For 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, so the way we're going to, we have some of our presenters, they need to leave to go to another meeting, and then they will be returning, and we have one presenter that will be coming after a meeting. So the way we're going to be looking at our principles, we're doing the first principle, Principle 2, create conditions for language learning. Then we're moving on to Principle 4, which is, can you hear me? Okay. Principle 4, which is adapt lesson delivery as needed. Then we'll move on to Principle 3, design high-quality lessons for language development. Then we'll move on to Principle 5, monitor and assess student language development. And then we'll move on to Principle 6, engage and collaborate with a community of practice. And then we'll move back to Principle 1, which is know your learners. That's how we plan to carry on the panel. And then we will have a 10 to 15-minute Q&A session. So basically what we're trying to say, as I said at the beginning, is that we need to have technology partner to enhance the challenges we face as educators in our classrooms every day. And hopefully we will be able to basically say that we need to optimize with technology. We can customize and allow that to happen. So without further ado, we start with our first presenter.
Switch this. Thank you, Christine. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I've got like 3 minutes before the raffle announcement comes again. So So I was asked to talk about Principle 2, which is creating conditions for language learning. And my colleague Shane, who's my plant in the audience, so if he asks a question, it's because I asked him to ask the question. We just created this course called Learning How to Learn a Language, and one of the concepts that we talked in that course is about creating a language ecosystem. Oh, sorry, I was out of the camera. Oh, I guess you're in the camera. You can sit. So we talked about creating a language ecosystem, and so that's what I would like to talk about today, because I think there are a lot of ways to use technology to create a language ecosystem. But first, let me talk about what an ecosystem is. So I have this image here of a plant, and if you think of the plant and what it needs to thrive, it needs sunlight, it needs water, it needs carbon dioxide, and if it has those things, it will be able to grow. So if we were to take that same concept and apply it to language acquisition, you might equate sunlight to the idea of motivation or interest. If your learners aren't motivated, if they're not interested, they are not going to learn. I'm sorry. You can drag a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And you cannot make your students learn no matter how hard you try. They have to want to do it. So then I might equate the carbon dioxide and the water to comprehensible input. If your students are interested and they have comprehensible input, they have learning going on, then they will have language acquisition. So I'd like to frame my remarks about using technology within this framework idea of an ecosystem. So the first part I'm going to talk about is how do you cultivate interest? How do you get your students interested in learning? One of the most interesting concepts I found actually doesn't require technology at all, but technology makes it easier, and that's the idea of gamification. So if you think about a game, there are certain aspects to a game that get people motivated, that get them interested. I mean, people spend hours online playing games, right? Why? Well, what is it about the game that makes them so motivated? So one of the things that makes it motivating is it has increasing difficulty as you go up through levels. So the learner evolves. Sorry, I guess I have more explanation. I just looked at my notes. Can you still hear me over that? I'll keep pushing on. Let me. Okay. Really into the mic now, you can hear me? Okay, I'm going to hold this then. So if you think about your curriculum as a set of tasks, right, and you divide those tasks into certain levels that are increasingly difficult, then you can create a game out of almost anything, okay? Inside each level, I'm just going to keep talking louder, maybe we'll get, inside each level, if you think about each task as increasing or expanding your learner's zone of proximal development, then you get the idea of as they progress through. So this is where comprehensible input will come in a little bit later. Another key component. Oh my gosh. Another key component. Can you hear me still? Keep going? Okay. Another key component is this idea of what the gamers call a core loop. So a core loop is a repeated set of actions, key sequences, okay? In the game, the core loop might be climbing a ladder, jumping, walking. Those are a set of repeated actions that they use to achieve their goal. If you were teaching reading, for example, you might have a core set of skills like these. Survey, question, read, can't read my writing, recall, and review. So those might be a set of reading skills that you want your students to learn that you could then take and form a core loop around those skills. Writing will have a set of skills. Listening will have a set of skills. So you find out what those actions are and you create that core loop in increasing levels of difficulty. Is he seriously yelling? Another important aspect of gamification is incentivization. You have to incentivize the learning. So a common incentive in games is badges or tags or coins or whatever it is you want to call it. Students are collecting these things, right? And as they collect more, they get certain benefits. They go up in level, different things like that. So I like the idea of using digital badges. Did I lose my mic? Is it okay? Oh, you just turned it down. Okay. So this is an example of a digital badge. I don't know if you can read underneath. It's got frequent flyer. Like those are all frequent flyer at the top, and they've got different levels that you've got there. And then the bottom has things like green thumb. And so certain tasks or mastery of certain skills gets you a certain badge, right? And so students will want to collect all of these. Think of it like the gold star in first grade, right? And you don't need technology to do this, but like I said, technology makes it easier. So Credly.com is a digital badge system that's free. It has free and paid, but you can create badges in there, and then your students can put those badges on their social networks. They can log into Credly and see what badges they've collected, and so that's one system. There are many, many others. I just don't have time to talk about all of them, but Credly is one of the most well-known ones. Another important aspect of gamification is this idea of feedback. So in a game, you slice the guy, he dies, you get points. There's this immediate type of feedback within it. So how as teachers can we provide feedback when students complete tasks? And also how can we take their get feedback from what they're doing to then inform our teaching? So one way that I love to do this is with live polling. And if you've never used live polling before, imagine if you ask a question and then you get individual answers from all your students, and you can quickly see, are they understanding? Have they learned this? Have I taught it well enough, etc. I use Socrative most of the time because Socrative will collate all that information and give it to me in a really easy format to see. If you've never used Socrative, that's a discussion for another time. There's way too much to tell you right now, but check out Socrative.com. You can do quizzes, exit tickets, all kinds of different things. It's a great way to get feedback from your students. You can also use it to provide feedback to your students sometimes. I use it for playing games in the classroom like Jeopardy and quizzes. Another one that I thought was really cool is called Plickers. With Plickers, you print out a card, and it's a picture basically the students hold, but it's formatted a certain way. So if they hold it one way, it means the letter A. If they hold it another way, it means B. If they hold it a third way, it's C and D. So you can ask ABCD questions, and they just hold their card, and then you scan your phone across the room, and it gives you all their answers. And so you can quickly see what answers they've selected. So again, another interesting way to do live polling. So how do you use thin technology to bring in comprehensible input into your classroom? One of the ways that I've done it is I've had students go out and find things in English, because that's what I teach, that they understand, that they liked. So it could be any genre. They could come in with a comic book. They could come in with a news article. Sometimes I'll give them a theme, or I'll give them a specific type of writing that I want them to bring in. And then they have to bring that in, and they have to then explain it to the rest of the class, and the rest of the class gets a chance to read it. And so it saves me a lot of work, as I'm letting the students go through and find the comprehensible input themselves. So that's one thing that I use a lot. I didn't have time to put them in the slides, but I also do things like online books, which are leveled. I find videos, all kinds of just things available on the internet that I can use as comprehensible input for my students. So again, the whole purpose of that is to create this ecosystem that your students, they're surrounded by English, they're using, or whatever language they're trying to learn, they're using that language, they're interacting with that language just as they do with their technology all around them, ubiquitously. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. Christel?
Can you hear me? All right. So I hope there's no prizes to be won anymore. Hello, I'm talking about the principle or principle 4, and within the context of adapting language delivery for various learning contexts. So all of us have students in our classrooms that are not doing the same as the person sitting next to them, right? You know, people learn faster, slower, some people need more visual input, and I'm going to talk about the fact that we need to have passion in us for reaching all of our learners. Are you with me? You know, as a teacher, we care about the students, and when we go home at night and we don't reach the students, it makes us feel bad, at least me, right? So I look at it more through a social justice approach. You know, this is just to make it possible for every student to remove all barriers to their learning, right? Okay. We all know that treating everybody the same is not necessarily fair, right? Because the same does not do the same for me than to the next person. So I'm going to give you a lot of social justice slides here that you can look at it later. Message me if you want to have the whole presentation or have cards. So I'm going to go fast because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So we need to have equitable practices in our classrooms to remove all obstacles for our students. And I'm going to talk about one specific strategy. The 6 principles are the big global work that kind of pertains to every context in the US and other countries, K-12, higher ed. They are best practices. So I'm going to look into some specific aspect and how the 6P are reflecting our equity issues for students. So first, I did a little bit of digging in the book where the terminology pops up, right? So in the book, we come up with adaptation, accommodation, differentiation is not particularly mentioned, and special education is mentioned. So I gave you a little blurb of the book, what's said about special education here, okay? And there's a lot in the book about RTI, response to intervention, and I give you a lot of information on that for those people who are not familiar with it, so you can look at it later. Come on. Yeah. So now my question was, after I looked in the book what is there for differentiation, how can I add the technology aspect to it? And that's what I'm going to be talking about. So what can we do and how can technology help? Go. So I'm going to specifically talk about front loading, which is a super technology infused activity you can do. If you teach any lesson, and we always say we need to have Bloom's taxonomy levels, right? The high levels. How do you reach them if somebody doesn't know basic words, right? And so oftentimes we spend our lessons on navigating around on the low Bloom's taxonomy instead of getting up to analysis and synthesis. So front loading is an activity where the teachers prepare essential knowledge, vocabulary, grammar, and so forth, and give it to the students before you start a new unit or lesson, okay? So if you have students that have other languages at home, you can give them materials in their own language to have context and content, and then also the English words in America, and in EFL context to give them the content. And they already come to class prepared for what they're going to do, okay? So when is it appropriate to do? When you teach new academic skills, all right? So it can be a language skill itself, or it can be an academic content skill, right? Like mathematics. How do I do it? So first of all, as a teacher, I need to be very crafty in dividing my content into chunks. What are meaningful chunks? What are word chunks? What are grammar connections students need? And then I prepare materials specifically for that and chunking it out to the students before they come into our classroom. I need to for instance, like in the United States, if I teach a unit on life cycle to elementary students, I can give them the life cycle in Spanish, in Arabic, in Nepalese, and also then give them the English words that correspond to it and pronounce it in little podcasts so they can hear it. And students that are slower, they can hear it 15 times. Students that are faster hear it 2 times, right? But it's in their own hand how often they learn it until they get it. Okay. So front loading gives clarity to the lesson for the teacher. For all of those who have trouble writing unit plans, it's a really good organizational principle. It's really targeted in how we instruct. And it also releases a lot of the responsibility to the students who are the co-constructors of knowledge. And also we can, if we know how our students learn, we can ramp up a little bit on the visual, we can ramp up on the audio, and we can teach them where they are. Okay, so next. So front loading then is a strategy that teachers use to provide students with predetermined guidance and reminders for applying necessary skills, strategies, and behaviors to be successful. And it's totally in their hands. We can provide everything to them, and then in the classroom, I actually help them to apply their knowledge by collaborating and co-learning with others. So, you know, the technology part is you can use YouTube videos, you can do little podcasts of 2-3 minutes using Screencastify or other ones. You can make Word documents, you can make Google documents, you can do Google Forms. All the tools that are available to us can be used for front loading, and usually students dig them very much because they are much more digitally minded than their teachers are, right? So when can we do it? It's best done, it's not the same as flipped learning, okay? It's a difference. So flipped learning is a different strategy. Front loading is when you're introducing a new lesson or new unit. So you're talking about new concepts specifically. And you can still flip on top of that, but that's different. So you do it for new lessons, units building on new background. Or some students don't have any background whatsoever in what I want to teach. They have no knowledge of the world in this, so I can catch them up to the other kids in the classroom, and that's where the social justice aspect comes in. You also can tell them how the words are pronounced, so they can practice that at home, and when they come to the classroom, they are already better prepared. So there are the same steps I already said before. You can start very slowly by building up over time, so you don't start full 100% with everything on the same time, okay? So you can link up the technology introduction with Bloom's higher level on Bloom's taxonomy, and like I said, outsource the lower levels to the homework and to the home. And also in the United States, a lot of our families parents are low educated and sometimes lack formal education and literacy skills. And I find it a great tool to have the parents watch the videos and the words and learn along with the kids. I learned a lot from my daughter when she went to American school, and she made me much better in pronouncing things since she went to school here, you know. So families learn along with the children. So, like I said, the reasons already discussed before. And this seems to be the same slides. We go on, please. Go on, go on. So, coming to a summary of this presentation, the 6 principles cover in the book a lot of the same strategies that I just brought up, except they are not looked upon through the cycle of using technology, right? Because we're like in a special focus group here. They do address all the basic principles of equal access to students to knowledge, and we're adding this different lens to it, you know, by looking at it from the technology angle. Okay. So it's easy to use digital tools to build bridges for students. And my goal is always to remove any barrier for any student so they can achieve the highest learning they can achieve. Okay. So here's my contact information if you want to get a lot more in depth. 5 minutes don't make for a deep dive, right? But I have cards if you want more information on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker, George. Issues, so we're skipping to the next principal.
Hey everybody. I'm Jennifer Meyer, and I'm going to be talking to you about number 5, which is monitor and assess student language development. So I'm going to be talking to you about how to use Screencastify. How many of you have used that or are familiar with it? It's a free Google extension. You only get a certain number of free videos a month. I've never exceeded that with my students. So I teach elementary school and middle school, public school. So we're going to use the Screencastify, and then we're going to use the Screencastify to assess the oral language development. And I use a 2-prong feedback for the assessment. I do a written assessment. I use a oral language rubric. I use an analytic rubric. If we have time, or if you have questions about it, I can show that to you later. And I also provide some video feedback. So some recent research has been done on video feedback that students are much more receptive to receiving video feedback than they are to receiving written feedback. One of the things that the researchers have discovered is that the students receive the feedback from the perspective it's one of many voices contributing to their learning, whereas the written feedback is more hierarchical. It's the teacher telling them what they did wrong. So I like to do some video feedback with my students, and I'm going to show you some examples of that, hopefully, if everything works. So in my district, we have Google Apps for Education. So it's a closed server. Only people in our district can access the information. So I can't share it with you outside the district because you can't open it. So I'm hoping that I'm logged in and I can open it. So I have a Google Classroom. And it opened. So I organize all of my assignments in the Google Classroom, and they're all here under classwork. And I have them sorted by topic. And so So the first thing you need to do is create your activity. I know that's hard to see. If I knew the lighting, I would have picked a different color. So you create your activity, and I usually create a video activity. And I use these oral language assessments for my students to prepare them for the oral language assessment. The state of Tennessee uses WIDA Access. Is anybody else familiar with this assessment? So it has an oral language component, and it's driven by technology. The students have to wear a headset and speak into a microphone, and for a lot of students that's weird and they don't know how to do it and they're uncomfortable. So we practice a lot of these strategies. Starting in August, the first week of school, I have them do an oral language video task. So I give them a video assignment. So they'll go to the Google Classroom and open the assignment. And this is what it looks like. So I know the print is really small, but I have the written question, because on the WIDA Access test, the students are given the question, and it's always in written form on the screen. So if they forget what the question was, they always have it on the screen to look back to, and that's a strategy I teach my students. If you forgot what you were supposed to be talking about, it's on the screen. So I do the same thing in my class. If they forget what the question was in my video, I'm like, it's on your screen. Go back to the assignment and read it. One second, sorry. The audio is not hooked up. It's over here on this side, I think. I love being in the Call IS, so we always have the technology problems. It's wonderful. I'm going to try to push play again and see what we get. Could you guys maybe text one of the dudes? No. Well, so anyways, what?
I would like you to use some evidence from the two texts, or you may
Can you
also
hear
read
it?
from the video that we watched about the experiment of addition.
Okay, so I record a video for my students. I really hope someone can come fix it, because I have a student next giving their response. So we have a certain list of things that I have the students particularly work on that I know that the access test is expecting them to do. One of them is to use formulaic language with transition words. Another thing they're expected to do is to repeat the question as the first sentence in their answer. So we practice this ad nauseum. If you don't know how to start your answer, look at the question on the screen and turn it into a statement. And another thing we practice is these transition words and having a closing. So the expectation on this assessment isn't I'm having a casual conversation with the lady on the screen. It's I'm giving an academic speech about the topic this lady's told me to speak about. And until we understood that this was what they were looking for, our students didn't perform very well on this assessment. Are they coming? Okay, yay. So I have the everything else I have for you is a video. So I don't know. Maybe I can show you my rubric while we're waiting for them to come fix the audio.
Where do we find them?
They've texted them. Allie and Valdez Pierce, And I basically took it, this is a holistic rubric, and I took it and broke it down each one of these different sections into an analytic rubric. And so I fill this out for my students so they know exactly where they are in each one of these areas: communication, fluency, grammar, vocabulary, and comprehension. And then I also give them some video feedback, which is not going to happen. So I'm going to then relinquish my position here, but we don't have any time. And let Johnna go ahead and start, and then if there's time at the end, then George can go. Maybe we can figure his out, and maybe I can show you the rest of my videos. And we have Christine, so we have lots coming still.
There's no audio.
What it sounds like, the question, the prompt. And now let's listen to the student's response. And I'm going to freeze the projector for a minute. Tell if it's frozen. On mine it says if it's frozen. Oh, it isn't? It's killing me. There's no smooth transition back to the. Does the freeze button not work on this? I want to freeze that screen. Yes, it's frozen. You froze it. Thank you. Okay, you can unfreeze it. Sorry. So this is my student's response to the prompt. He picked the image himself.
I think three inmates did not escape from Alcatraz. There is two reasons. First reason that I think they didn't escape is water current. The video shows that the Dutchman failed to escape in experiment because of the water current. People cannot defeat water current means that the option that they have is only to be drowned in water.
Okay, so you can see that that student has mastered that formulaic language and repeating the question at the beginning of the response, so he got a very nice grade. But then I also recorded a video for him to give him some feedback.
Hi, Teriosh. Overall, you did an excellent job on this speaking assessment. One thing you did well was using transition words and phrases to connect the ideas in your recording. For example, you used the words from the question to start your answer. You used transition phrases like the first reason I think this is, and the second reason I think this is.
Okay, so Yes. Now I will relinquish the floor. Thank you for your patience working through our technical difficulties, and I think George might be ready. Maybe. Thank
These
you,
help
guys.
connect the ideas, and the listener knows
Can we not see the screen? My screen over there? So I think I'm on the third principle. So we did get permission to use that image. It's the 6 principles image. It has all the principles. And I just want you to pay attention a little bit on the graphic. So if you see the principles, how they're formed, knowing your learners is the core, is the most important. And the 6th principle is a community of practice, right? So all the other principles are around. So that means that are important and essential parts of the process. Now, as we've mentioned, those are the books by TESOL that talk about the principles. These are the publications. And the quick guides, of course, you can visit the bookstore and you can purchase them. All right, so back to my principle. So I had to discuss about principle number 3. So principle number 3, it talks about designing high quality lessons for language development. And to the material that has been produced up to now, there is some technology, but more technology can be incorporated. So I've decided to write some of the outcomes for the principles. So teachers can prepare lessons with clear outcomes and convey them to their learners. How can they do that? They can do that via learning management systems and their syllabi, so they can use the technology to state their outcomes, to have them so students can see them all the time and they're available for them. They can also provide, 3B, and enhance input through varied approaches, techniques, and modalities, through applications and different kinds of visual aids that they can use. And teachers may also engage learners in the use and practice of authentic language. That's by using real-life examples. So they use authentic language, so students are more motivated by that. And technology can assist in that manner. All right. I think the next one discusses about the same. The learners engage with relevant and meaningful content. So in the era of technology, I think that relevant and meaningful content is something that is very, very crucial. So we have some learners that, they're very tech savvy. They're on their phones. Their screen is their life. So trying to create something relevant and meaningful might be something that might be of a challenge if there is a difference in, I'll say, age. So the digital divide between, if you made the digital natives and digital immigrants, of course, there's lots of research that's been against that research, but still, I think if with all the tools that are there available, free tools, technological advances, even nowadays publishers have VR examples, so you can use VR. You can try to make them interested, provide meaningful examples that are relevant to the context, to the culture, to their gender related, football, fashion, technology, games. There are lots of gamers, lots of teenagers play lots of games, so you might want to motivate them with that. The next one talks about differentiated instruction according to their needs. Now, needs, literacy levels, and goals. So depending on what they want to achieve, they can technology can assist you to that. So for example, if you're teaching a writing course, there's lots of tools out there that can help you. Not grade, I would say. I mean, there's a product by a respected publisher that students can go, they can put the writing on, and it gives them advice. It doesn't grade the essay, but it gives them very, very good advice about what do they need to change. So writeandimprove.com, for example. That's a great tool that you can use. That it's for free, and your students can submit their tasks. There's several tasks, different genres, even for IELTS practice, exams, different levels. So you can go put that there, and they can have some practice. All right, and finally, you can use technology and through the 6 principles to talk about problem solving and critical thinking, as well as, I think the last one is the most important and critical these days, self-directed learning, because we know that classroom, like what you learn in class is not enough. So they need to practice outside, and technology can actually help through that with applications, TED Talks, videos, anything they like. They have more practice, watching videos with English subtitles. I think that would be more than the just in class. All right, thank you.
Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Dr. Johnna Paraiso. I'm supposed to be Joseph Winery, but he was not able to come. So I apologize for not being him. And I'm here to join my colleagues as we discuss how technology can infuse the 6 principles of TESOL. I understand that there are those that think that technology may not be a part of the 6 principles in the way that we believe it is. I think that technology in our world today has proven itself to be an integral part of not just the 6 principles, but of sound pedagogy. Before I became an ESL teacher, I was a music teacher back in Detroit, and I loved that gig. It was a wonderful gig. Everybody loves the music teacher because you have a really big classroom, you've got all the instruments. The kids love you because they want to be in your productions. I had 1,200 students. So they wanted to be in the productions. The parents love you because they love a chance to look at their kids. The teachers love you because when they send everybody to band practice, they get to go and have their break, right? Well, then I became an ESL teacher, and life became very different. I was lucky to get a classroom at all, much less a nice big classroom. my student load went from about 1,200 to, it depended on the school. I might have 30 in a class. I might have 2. And I discovered that not everybody loves the ESL teacher, particularly in this current political climate. And I got asked more than once, why do you want to teach those kids? And I discovered that I was not the only ESL teacher in this particular situation. Some research that I did after experiencing a lot of marginalization and isolation on my own part, I started talking to some colleagues. Now that's difficult when you are the only ESL teacher in your building. And you're lucky to have a closet and thrilled if you get a portable. And I'm talking K-12 education. So finding my colleagues, that could be a challenge. And maybe we would connect at our beginning of the year school meetings, but other than that, we didn't see each other. And if I was an itinerant at 2 different schools, I didn't always see the faculty of either school, which was nice because I never had to do bus duty, but I didn't have the chance to engage and collaborate. And that is Principle 6, engage and collaborate within communities of practice. How can you do it when you never see anybody else and when the people don't necessarily like you until test time, and then they love you because they have to code the kids differently? But I discovered that I was not the only one. A number of my colleagues were experiencing marginalization and isolation. And because of the nature of our jobs, we had to find other ways to develop these communities of practice. And that's where the technology came in. See, when I first started teaching ESL, the best I could do was to call my friend at the end of the school day and say, I've got this kid and I don't know what to do. But as technology came of age, all of a sudden I found I could check online and I could read things online. There might be an article. There might be an online book, an ebook. But that's not engaging and collaborating. And that is the 6th principle, is to engage and collaborate within a community of practice. That is where social networking comes in. There are a number of ways you can do this. And because our community of practice, which is TESOL, is worldwide, technology is the perfect tool to take on principle number 6. I could go into different social networking platforms, and you may very well know them better than I do. I'll just tell you a few of my favorites. Well, first of all, let me back up just a bit. Yeah, I don't know, I'm from Tennessee, and I don't know in your states if you're evaluated according to a particular rubric, but our professional development is evaluated. And if we don't have a community of practice that we can prove that we're developing professionally, then we don't get all of our points for our teacher evaluations, our rubrics. Now, that is frustrating, but let's step back. If we're going to develop professionally, then Vygotsky, Bandura, both say that all learning is social in nature. We know that because we're language teachers. Why would we teach language if there's not a social context? Same with professional development, same with these communities of practice. It must be social. So we need to find a way to create these social communities of practice, and that's where technology comes in. So you may get on Twitter. That's one of my favorites. The different Twitter hashtags, Judy Haynes does one called #ELLChat. And she is wonderful about giving resources. And it is not a sit and get. You can collaborate, you can meet people online, you can share resources through your Google Drive, through different places, Dropbox. Another hashtag I like to follow on Twitter is the ELLChat_book club. And I don't expect you all to remember these, but once you start typing #ELL into Twitter, they'll come up. The ELL Chat Book Club is a slow chat, which means that the moderator for that particular week will post a question, a discussion question. It's not synchronous, it's asynchronous, so you just get to it when you can. You can still engage and collaborate, but it's sort of like having a pen pal. You do it when you can get there. And that is a terrific way to find out about new books, about new publications, and to share your frustrations with dealing with maybe a difficult teacher in your building, not that that would ever happen, or a difficult colleague, or a difficult student, or best tools to improve parent and community engagement. YouTube is another one. There is a conference on YouTube called the Virtue EL Conference. Virtual, VIRTUEL. This year it's Virtual 19, and it is run by Carol Salva, and she is an author and a presenter, and it is people sharing their frustrations in their classroom via video, and you can record a video reply and just get some professional development that way. So that is a way that, those are ways, there are other ways, Facebook, Google+, there are ways that we can touch base with our colleagues and not have to be in the same room, because that may be physically impossible at times. Also, we need to be able to collaborate and build communities of practice within our general education colleague system in our buildings. That can be difficult. I like to use technology to create a Facebook group with the different schools that I work with, and that has helped. Again, Twitter is another good tool. If I have to meet with a teacher, I may not be able to do that in person necessarily because I am itinerant. So I use Zoom meeting. I also use Facebook Live, which I can't access at school, but I can access it in my car. So all of this to say, yes, technology infuses the 6 principles. I think technology is vital to the 6th principle of engaging and collaborating within a community of practice.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Dr. Christine Coombe.
Thanks everyone for sticking around to the bitter end. You might be wondering why we're starting with Principle 1 at the very end of the day. I'd like to say that we planned it that way, but I had a conflict at the beginning. So I think Principle 1 is know your learners, and it's not really a logical way to end something, but I think it's a good way to end in that I feel that Principle 1, knowing your learners, is probably one of the most important of the 6 principles. Now the principles reads, teachers learn basic information about their students' families, language, cultures, and educational backgrounds to engage them in classrooms and prepare and deliver lessons. And for the reasons that a teacher can best adapt instruction to students that they know well. So, what types of information should we learn about our students? And this information comes from a variety of different sources. Well, basic information means the student's name, how it's pronounced and spelled, the student's native country, their address, their guardians or parents' telephone numbers, and of course some of these it would depend on the age of the students that you teach. Emergency contacts, things like health history, how will the student arrive and depart from school every day? Was the student born in the U.S. or is the student an immigrant, a refugee? And how much schooling has the student had? Now again, this kind of information would differ based on the level of student you are teaching and whether you're based in an ESL or an EFL context. Oh. In a meta-analysis, let me see if that's... One of the most important researchers on the topic of why students or why teachers need to know about our students, a scholar named Hake in 2018 came up with a very seminal article and a list of what great teachers know about their students. So you can have a look at this list, but one of the things I noticed, and I'd like to go further with, is the idea of the digital citizen. So one of the benefits of teaching or knowing more about your students is that you can help them in ways that you couldn't without that knowledge. So let's have a look at citizenship in a digital age. Now, I encourage you to Google this, and it's a very, very interesting, and I apologize for the small print, but a very interesting graphic about regular citizenship, and if we look at also digital citizenship. If we look at number 9, which states, for citizenship to proactively promote physical and health and well-being, the digital version of that would be to proactively limit the risks based on the use of technology. So each of these standards by which we measure citizenship in young people today has been digitized, if you will. A very interesting resource in my view. Now let's look at some of the benefits of actually getting to know our students better. Well, a very interesting book that I came across in a number of years ago has the title, Kids Don't Learn from Teachers They Don't Like. And I think that pretty much explains it all, and it's so, so true. It's very important. Teacher and student rapport and good relationships promotes better interaction in the classroom. And establishing rapport with students early on in an educational setting can result in a smoother classroom dynamic and fewer classroom management issues. And that's something that teachers in these day and age can really benefit from. Another benefit is that teachers can help students better navigate the classroom and the world outside the classroom by creating a psychologically safe environment and determining each student's readiness for learning. And this is especially important with younger students. One of the tasks that we as teachers need to do is identify multiple access points to the course curriculum to demystify it and to increase student engagement and success. This is a benefit of getting to know your students better. And of course, developing and demonstrating greater emotional intelligence is yet another benefit. What does the research tell us about this? Well, a scholar named Haiti conducted a meta-analysis of 800 studies on the topic and came up with the following research findings on whether teachers and students should know each other, should have a closer relationship with each other. The major findings are that a teacher-student relationship dictates the impact that teachers will have on students in a general sense. And students who have constructive relationships with their teachers are more likely to do well in school at any age. Teachers who work on actively building relationships also have a strong effect on the lives of their students at any age. Strong teacher-student relationships shape the way that children think and act in school, and this is particularly for younger students. And especially important in my view is that students and teachers who know each other better are more likely to feel positive about the classroom environment and about school in general. And students are more willing to work hard, to risk making mistakes, to ask for help, provided they have a closer teacher-student relationship. And finally, constructive teacher-student relationships have a large and positive impact on students' academic results. And I think this last empirical finding is very important for what we do. So, how do we get to know our students better, and how can we use technology to help us? Well, first off is identifying yourself, telling your students who you are and why you're there. Is very important because students aren't necessarily going to want to share things about themselves if teachers don't share things about themselves first. Another recommended strategy is to be clear and be close. Students achieve when they know what we expect from them, and letting students know that you're available, because oftentimes the amount of learning that takes place in a classroom is directly related to the distance a teacher maintains with students. So circulating throughout the room, maintaining a physical presence is very important, and it is not advisable for teachers to let their desks at the front of the room or wherever be their sanctuary from the student environment. So it's important to find things to appreciate about your class and about your students, and to forge a classroom identity. Traditional ways of getting to know our students better were that, students generally write an essay about themselves or a letter of introduction. We've all probably done that before. They might fill out surveys that we send around to them, or if they're younger, draw pictures of themselves and things that they relate to. Nowadays, according to students, the best way to get to know them is to talk to the students on a regular basis, and to not only talk about themselves in the context of how they're doing in school, but about themselves and about their interests outside of the classroom. Students also suggest that playing games, whether these be physical games or computer games or language learning apps and games as well, is another way, because having fun with students is the best way to get to know them, according to them. So I suggest using the first day of any class as a way of getting to know each other. And even to this day, I teach in a university context in Dubai with all male students, and I generally teach a research methods class. So the first day, we conduct a little bit of research where students interview me and I interview them. So it functions as a classroom warm-up, but a way to get to know one another. Learner profiles is another suggested activity, and learner profiles can be digitized to a great extent as well. And this is the collection of information throughout the course of a semester or an academic year, so that you have a complete learner profile, which can later be digitized as well. Arrive to class early, stay behind, and use that time for one-on-one interactions with students. Observe how students interact in class with others, because you can learn a lot about them by watching how they actually interact with one another. Asking students to share their favorites, such as their favorite websites, apps, hobbies, is one way to get to know their digital footprint. And one of the most often cited recommendations for getting students to know you better is to learn their names. And I wish I could say that this was a strength of mine, but unfortunately, since day one of my teaching career, I have a block learning students' names. And if I don't see students at least 8 hours a week, I will never learn their names. Well, maybe never is a strong word, but I will only learn their names in two contexts. The first is if they're really, really good students, and I bet you can guess the second context, can't you? If they're really, really annoying. So for me, if you have any tips on how I can finally learn my students' names, I'd be happy to hear about them. I'm going to share one example with you that I found online. Another ways that has been suggested, and it's also a suggestion if you have classroom management problems, is to greet students as they come into the classroom. They like this, they feel it personalizes their instruction. So the sample activity that I'm going to try, next time I meet a class for the first time, is the name game activity. And I think you can use you can do this traditionally, or you can do this in the context of a digital screencast, for example. The content here fits perfectly for a simple screencast or a simple video that students might produce either in class at home. So looking at what your name is, where does it come from, if you're named after someone, the concepts of nicknames and how did they originate, etc. And if you could change your name, what would you name yourself? And if you, as English teachers, you can look at those questions and see that there's a lot of language input that you can get out of that, as well as a lot of scope for technology integration. Self-awareness is the key. So I think that helping students develop self-awareness is also crucial. Students learn more about themselves, and as this happens, you learn more about them. Self-awareness is the core principle of emotional intelligence, which is something that especially younger learners need help in developing. And it's also a crucial concept in the leadership of your own life. So helping students learn more about themselves that will result in you learning more about them is an excellent way to start, in my view. So how can we help students to get to know themselves better? Well, I think you probably have already heard of the 3 activities that I've put on the screen here: a SWOT analysis, either the Myers-Briggs or some other personality inventory, and the Johari window. These work best, of course, with, I think, more advanced level students and older students. Let's look at each of these in more depth and have a look at how we can digitize them. Time up? What? Okay. Okay, hopefully you're going to be writing us or emailing us for our PowerPoint presentations, which we're happy to send you. And if you have, I've included on each of these slides a brief description of what these are, as well as a nice link that you can do a digital version of, let's say, a SWOT analysis, an MBTI. But again, for this MBTI, it's not recommended for students who are younger than 13, as well as a Johari window. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But just to let you know that this whole presentation is available on YouTube. We're going to put up the address. Okay. And we're going to put up the address on the screen so that you can take that down. And also, you can access the PowerPoint presentations also. We have time for one question. Actually, we don't have time, but we'll take one question if there's one question from the floor. Yes. Okay. Okay. So this is the website that you can get the presentation from. It's already on YouTube, right? It's already uploaded on YouTube.
I'm really happy that this session focused on the integration of technology with the 6 principles, since it's not explicit in the original TESOL book. So congratulations on making it explicit. My question for Jennifer is, when you give video feedback to your students, what's the time trade-off between the traditional feedback and the video feedback?
That's a great question.
We can't hear, so you need to come.
Can I use my teacher voice?
No.
It's good?
You're
Okay.
fine.
But I'll
Okay.
just. So you're right. That's a good point. I have a handful of students, so it doesn't take me a very long time. If you had more students, that video that I recorded was about a minute long. It probably takes about 5 minutes total to go through the whole thing. Of course, there's the time that you have to reflect on what I'm going to say and which points am I going to address. But also, I always grade using the rubric, and I still have to go through the same thought process. So I have to consider each item on the rubric. How well did this child use formulaic language? And then I'll write some examples on my rubric. I like the way you use the word in addition to, just to completely explicitly tell them what they did well. So for me, it takes about the same amount of time to do the rubric or to do the video feedback.
I'd like to thank you for coming to our session. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but it is a session you'll never forget. Let's put it that way. We'd like to welcome you back tomorrow to our showcase, EV Village, and room A315 for all our technical, for all our technical sessions to come Thursday and Friday. In half an hour, we have our Call IS open meeting, and we'd like to invite you. It'll be in room A315 as well. Thank you and have a good night. 6:45, sorry, 6:45. I've lost track of time too.